Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So something a little bit different today. I'm going to be going through 4 questions I get asked all the time. So the first one is, I've tried other treatments, will hypopressives help me? So hypopressives works very differently to doing your normal pelvic floor squeeze and releases. So your Kegels, normal pelvic floor exercises. What we're doing with hypopressives is we're getting the pelvic floor to move more dynamically with the natural movement of your diaphragm. So when we normally breathe in, our diaphragm moves down, pelvic floor relaxes, and as we exhale, the diaphragm moves up and the pelvic floor moves up in this sort of synergistic movement. And what we're doing in hypopressives is we're making that bigger. So when you breathe in, diaphragm comes down, pelvic floor softens and relaxes, exhale, pelvic floor contracts up just a little bit, and as we do that rib stretch, you get more movement in that. And if you have a little look on one of my shorts, you can see an ultrasound scan of what happens to the lift through the bladder when I do a normal pelvic floor exercise compared to a hypopressive breath. So for a lot of women who've tried different types of pelvic floor treatments, hypopressives is just a very different approach, and it can be incredibly helpful. So it helps to decongest the pelvic floor. So if you've got that heaviness, sort of bulgy feeling, that's really, really good at relieving that. It can help to remind the pelvic floor of its normal range of movement, helps the pelvic floor to relax and contract automatically, which can be really helpful if you suffer from things like constipation. It improves the strength and tone of the pelvic floor, and we've seen that in the research. It also improves the way that the deep abdominals manage changes to intra-abdominal pressure. So most commonly, if you're getting an exacerbation of symptoms, it's often either when your pelvic floor is tired, sort of as the day goes on, or if you're coughing, sneezing, those kind of things. And if that is happening, hypopressives will help you manage those changes in intra-abdominal pressure better, to help to relieve those sort of kind of quick increases in symptoms you can get when you cough, sneeze, things like that. What we're doing with the different poses is getting the pelvic floor and the diaphragm to move together dynamically through a different range of movement. So we're tapping into standing up poses, so it's very functional. We spend most of our days standing, or we're kind of walking around, or maybe sitting. We don't spend our days lying on the floor. So we want those different poses to really tap in and optimize the technique. So the second question kind of ties into that. So should I do the hypopressive poses where I feel the vacuum the most? And although this is incredibly tempting, because there are going to be poses like quadruped, maybe the first diver position, maybe your floor positions, or like the super vacuum poses where you feel more of a lift, it's actually better for you that you're doing a whole range of different poses. 1, because we're building whole body strength and tone. 2, because we want that real kind of depth of movement with the pelvic floor and the diaphragm dynamically through lots of different poses. And we know that we've seen with people that if they stick with some of the easier poses, they just don't get the progressions that we want. And that's why in Create Lift we do 17 different, quite dynamic poses to really get the most out of the technique. So the third question is, how long is it going to take for me to notice an improvement? So this is actually really important. So it normally takes around 1 to 4 weeks for you to start to notice a difference. Now that difference might be you're getting up in the morning and you're not getting that heaviness straight away. It's coming on, say, about 11 o'clock in the morning. Or you've noticed that the worst times for getting symptoms during your day or during your week have been less for 2 or 3 times that week. You might also notice that if you go on a walk, you're getting a little bit less heaviness, or you may just find that you've just had a few days that you are thinking about your prolapse less. So that's how we sort of start to monitor people's improvements when we're working with people one-to-one. If you're working with a trainer, they can look at your technique and look at your symptom improvements kind of side by side, because actually everybody's vacuum looks different, and we want to optimize your technique and get your ribs moving and get that lateral breathing into the back of the ribs. And get that vacuum looking really good. But for some people, they'll have a really small vacuum, but actually they're doing really, really well. So we like to look at both when we're working with people one-to-one. And the fourth question is, how do I know that I'm doing it correctly? So this is a bit tricky, because it is quite a different technique. You can look at videos and you can sort of look at it and think, am I doing it right? Does it feel right? Can I feel it in my throat? There's lots of different things that I go through in the beginners playlist that will help you tell if you're doing it correctly. But hands down, the best way to know is actually to be looked at by a hypopressive coach, myself or somebody else, and just to see how you're doing with the breath work, to check that you're progressing normally and that you're feeling the things that we'd expect you to feel in your body, like tightening in the top of the belly while you're doing the rib stretch, a little bit of tightening in the throat in the upright poses, and then that your symptoms are improving as we'd expect as well. But if you'd like to be checked, then you can get in touch with myself or one of my team, and we can have a look at you and check that you're on the right track. So hopefully that's helpful. Just a few common questions I get asked. If you've got any other questions, then do just pop them in the comment section below. And when I next do a video on common questions, I will answer your questions then. Take care. Bye.